My family called me a monster for refusing to donate my kidney. Then the DNA test exposed everything. I'm a 32-year-old woman, and 3 weeks ago my parents told our entire extended family, plus half the internet, that I'm a monster. Why? Because I refused to donate a kidney to my little brother. That's the version they tell. Evil, heartless sister refuses to save her dying baby brother out of spite. But the truth is a lot uglier and a lot more complicated. A DNA test, a 30-year lie, and a man I never knew existed all got involved. And now I don't even recognize the family I grew up in. I need this out of my head. You don't need to agree with me, but I need to say it somewhere that isn't a group chat full of guilt trips. My name is Mara. At least that's what we'll go with here. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in what looked like a very normal family. If you drove past our house, you'd see the usual. Cut grass, bikes lying in the yard, minivan in the driveway, wind chimes on the porch. My mom was a nurse at St. Vincent's. My dad worked construction, steady job, steady income. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. Vacations to the coast once a year, new backpacks for school, dance lessons for me when I was younger. If you flip through our photo albums, you'd see birthday parties, Christmas mornings, first days of school. You'd see 3 kids, my older sister Rebecca, me, and my younger brother Tyler. In most of the photos, Tyler is front and center. The rest of us are background decoration. I didn't have words for it when I was little, but I learned very early that in our house there were different rules for different people. Rebecca is 3 years older than me. She was the responsible one. Perfectionist, good grades, school choir. We shared a room until she went to college and spent a lot of late nights whispering about how weird our parents were. She always tried to be the mediator, the peacemaker. I think that role almost broke her in its own way. I was the strong one, apparently, quietly competent. The one my mom would say doesn't need as much attention, while she followed Tyler around with a metaphorical cushion under his ass. And then there was Tyler, 8 years younger than me, the sun around which everything orbited. I still remember the day my parents brought him home. I was 8. There were balloons tied to the mailbox and a welcome baby banner in the living room. All the aunts and uncles and grandparents came over, and everyone kept saying how special he was. My mom bent down, put a hand on my shoulder and said, "This is your baby brother. You have to help take care of him, okay? He's very special." That word, special, became the foundation of the next 2 decades. You know how in some families, the youngest is a little more spoiled, but everyone mostly gets treated fairly? That was not us. When I was in 5th grade, I got 1B in math. I still remember the shame of that grade circled in red pen. My dad grounded me for 2 weeks. No TV, no sleepovers, no anything. He sat me down at the kitchen table and lectured me about potential and not being lazy and how the real world doesn't hand things to you. My mom backed him up. "We just know you can do better, honey. We're doing this because we love you." When Tyler was in 10th grade, he failed an entire semester. Not 1 class, not 2, literally every core subject. F in English, F in history, F in math, F in science. He barely showed up, didn't turn in homework, skipped tests. We got his report card, and my father took one look and said, "Tyler's just not a test person. School isn't for everyone. He's got other talents." My mom made macaroni and cheese and said, "We'll find something that fits you better, sweetie. No consequences, no grounding, no lectures about life being hard." When I was 16, I borrowed my dad's truck without asking and drove to a friend's house. I had my license. I was a good driver. I fully admit I should have asked, but I got home safe, parked it in the driveway, and thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Dad found out that night and completely lost it. "You don't respect this house. You don't respect my rules." I lost driving privileges for 3 months. I had to take the bus to school and work, and every time someone asked why, he'd tell the story about how Mara thought the rules didn't apply to her. When Tyler was 17, he took the same truck, drunk, after a party. He crashed it into a telephone pole at 2 a.m. He could have killed someone. He could have killed himself. My parents got a call from the cops, went and picked him up, spun some story about the pole jumping out of nowhere. Dad told the insurance company it was a hit and run in a parking lot so they'd cover the repairs. "Everyone makes mistakes," he told Tyler. "Just be more careful next time." I watched all this from the staircase like a ghost. It went on like that for years, and I could give you 100 more examples. Money was a big one. When I was applying to colleges, I did the research, made spreadsheets, talked to my school counselor. I calculated that I'd need about $3,000 for application fees, SAT prep, and a couple of campus visits. It felt like a lot, but also like an investment in my future. I sat my parents down at the kitchen table and laid everything out. My dad listened, nodded, and then gave me this whole speech about, "We just don't have that kind of money right now, and you're going to have to figure it out yourself, and this will build character." So I did. I got a job bagging groceries after school and on weekends. I worked all summer. I skipped hanging out with friends so I could take extra shifts. I paid for every application, every test, every bus ticket to go visit a campus. 2 years later, Tyler barely scraped through graduation with a 2.1 GPA and very little intention of doing anything. Suddenly, he decided he needed to backpack through Europe with his friends. They had this whole route planned, hostels and trains and bars. The total cost? Around $8,000. My parents didn't sit him down for a "we don't have that kind of money" talk. They sat him down to look at brochures and websites. He deserves a chance to see the world before he settles down. My mom told me in this dreamy voice. He's had such a hard time in school. I will never forget standing in the kitchen when she said that. I was home from college for winter break, same grocery store job. Same feeling of never doing quite enough. I was working to pay for textbooks because my scholarship covered tuition but not everything else. "That's great," I said, because I had learned early that complaining changed nothing. "I'm happy for him." My mom gave me this look, this mix of guilt and defensiveness, and said, "It's different circumstances, Mara. You understand." And I did. I understood exactly. Rebecca understood too. We'd sit on her tiny back porch at night when I'd visit. She'd pour us wine and say, "It's like they have two families in one house. One set of rules for us, one for Tyler. Do you think it's just because he's the baby?" she'd ask. "Or because he's a boy?" I'd say, "I don't know," she'd sigh. "Whatever it is, it sucks." By my early 20s, I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped even asking them for things. I got a full ride to Oregon State, graduated with honors in civil engineering, found a great job in Portland, married my husband Evan, who came from this warm, loud, equal family that made me feel both loved and wildly confused. We have 2 kids, our daughter Nora, 11, who is basically made of questions and glitter, and our son Cal, 7, who is obsessed with astronauts and refuses to eat food that looks suspicious. Evan watched my family for a while and then said after one painful Christmas, "I don't understand how they don't see the difference in how they treat you and Tyler." "They see it," I said. "They just don't care enough to change it." So I adjusted. I went to family dinners when absolutely necessary, answered the group chat with neutral emojis, and tried to build a life where my sense of worth didn't depend on people who had faithfully shown me I ranked last. And then Tyler's kidneys failed. It was a Tuesday night in October. I was at the dining table helping Nora with her solar system project. Paint everywhere, glitter on the cat, Cal helping by turning Jupiter into a basketball. My phone rang and I almost ignored it because it was my mom, and we'd already texted about Thanksgiving logistics earlier. When I picked up, she sounded like she was underwater. "Mara, it's Mom. You need to come to the hospital. It's Tyler, St. Vincent's. ICU waiting room. Please hurry." She didn't answer any of my questions. She just kept saying, "Please hurry," and then "It's his kidneys." And then she cried so hard the words fell apart. Evan didn't ask questions when I grabbed my keys and my coat. "Text me," he said, already herding the kids into the living room. "Drive safe." By the time I got to ICU, my stomach felt like I'd swallowed ice. My parents were there, Rebecca was there, Tyler's wife Jen was there, white-knuckling a styrofoam coffee cup. The nephrologist explained it. Polycystic kidney disease, cysts slowly strangling his kidneys. Something silent and genetic that had been growing inside him for years. His kidney function had nosedived and he needed dialysis immediately. Long-term, he needed a transplant. "We're putting him on the national list," the doctor said. "But with his numbers and age, a living donor is his best chance. Immediate family members are the most likely match." "I'll get tested," I said before anyone could even react. We all did, me, Mom, Dad, Rebecca, Dad's sister who drove down from Seattle. They took tubes of blood, explained about antigens and HLA markers and rejection risks. "It'll take 5 to 7 days," the nurse said. "We run several panels and cross-check everything." That night in bed, I stared at the ceiling while Evan traced circles on my wrist. "If I'm a match, I'm going to do it," I whispered. "I know you are," he said. "You're a good person." "I hate him sometimes," I admitted, "for how easy he's had it, for how they worship him. But I don't want him to die. I don't want that on my conscience." "Then do what your conscience says," he replied. "Just make sure you're not doing it to finally earn their approval, because that's one thing this can never buy." and you'll hurt yourself trying. 5 days later, the whole family gathered in a conference room on the 4th floor. It was one of those bland rooms that could host either a birthday party or a funeral, and no one would know until the people arrived. Plastic chairs, long table, whiteboard in the corner. Dr. Patterson came in with a thick folder and tired but kind eyes. He started with a mini lecture about tissue matching and 6 antigens and how the higher the match, the better the outcome. My mom squeezed a tissue into a damp rope. My dad stared at the table. Tyler sat in his wheelchair looking 10 years younger and 10 years older at the same time. Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Morrison, Dr. Patterson said, neither of you are suitable donors. There are blood type incompatibilities and too many mismatched antigens. The risk of rejection is high. Mom made this little strangled sound. Dad just nodded like he'd expected it. Rebecca, he continued, you share some antigens with Tyler, but only 3 out of 6. Combined with the antibody panel, it would be considered a high-risk transplant. It's technically possible, but not recommended unless there is no other option. Rebecca looked torn between relief and guilt. Aunt Linda, unfortunately, you're a non-starter because of blood type. I'm sorry. Then he looked at me. Mara, he said, you are a full match. 6 out of 6 HLA antigens. Blood type identical. No concerning antibodies. Perfect kidney function. He paused. In transplant medicine, we call this a dream donor. This is about as good a match as we see outside of identical twins. Everyone looked at me at once. It was like being under a microscope. Evan squeezed my hand under the table. I took a breath. If I'm medically cleared, I'm willing to donate, I said. I felt a weird mix of fear and weird, ugly satisfaction that for once I was the one they needed. My mom burst into tears. Oh, thank God, she kept repeating. Thank God, thank God. Tyler was staring at me with wet eyes. Mara, Dr. Patterson held up a hand. We still need to do a full workup on you, he reminded everyone. This is major surgery with risks. We need to be sure you're healthy enough and informed about what this means. There's one more thing I need to address before we proceed. He shuffled papers and his whole demeanor shifted. Careful, heavier. As part of the genetic screening, we also verify familial relationships, he said. It's standard. Sometimes it saves us from serious complications. He took a breath and looked at my parents, then at me, then at Tyler. According to the DNA analysis, Mara and Tyler are not full siblings. The air turned solid. No one even inhaled. And, he continued gently, Mara and Mr. Morrison do not share a sufficient number of markers to be biologically related. Based on these results, Mr. Morrison is not Mara's biological father. My mother made a sound I've never heard from a human throat, like something tearing. My dad's face went slack, all the blood draining out. Rebecca muttered, "What?" under her breath. Tyler just stared at me like I'd grown an extra head. We ran the analysis 3 times, Dr. Patterson said quickly, to rule out lab error. I'm so sorry this is coming out like this. I understand this is a lot. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I need air, I said, and left before anyone could touch me. I walked out of the room, down the hall, into an empty elevator, out of the hospital, into my car. I drove on autopilot and ended up at Laurelhurst Park, parked under a tree, looking at a pond full of oblivious ducks. Not his daughter. Every weird look, every harsher punishment, every time I felt like I didn't quite belong in my own family, snapped into place like the final piece in a puzzle you hate. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually my phone rang. It was Evan. All I managed to say was, "He's not my father," before I started sobbing. "I'm coming to you," he said. "Where are you?" He found me 20 minutes later, sat in the seat beside me, didn't say it'll be okay, or maybe there's a mistake. He just let me fall apart and then put my pieces back in my hands. Of course it's why, I kept saying. I was never his. I was the affair. I was the mistake he couldn't forget. That's why Tyler could do no wrong. That's why I had to be perfect just to be tolerated. None of that is your fault, Evan said quietly. None of it. You didn't ask to be born. You didn't ask for their mess. They put this on you. The next morning I called my mom. We're having a family meeting, I said. Your house. Noon. Everyone. Mara, please, if you just let me explain. You'll explain then, I said and hung up. At noon they were all there. My mother looked 20 years older than the last time I'd seen her. Eyes swollen, hair a mess. My father, Robert I guess, stood stiffly by the window. Rebecca hovered by the couch. Tyler sat in an armchair with a blanket over his legs. Jen was perched on the arm of his chair, small and scared. I want the truth, I said. I didn't sit. All of it. No more lies. No more we thought it was best. I want names and timelines. My mother broke first. His name is David Chan, she said between tears. We worked together at the hospital. It was stupid. It was a mistake. I was lonely and angry with your father, and he was kind, and it got out of hand. I found out I was pregnant after it ended. I told David and I told your father. We almost got divorced. Robert finally looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, but there was no softness there. When you were born, the hospital did standard newborn blood typing, he said. Your mother and I are both O. You were A. It's genetically impossible. I knew that day. And you stayed, I said flatly. I thought it was the right thing to do, he said. For Rebecca's sake. For appearances. For stability. And me. My voice shook. Did anyone stay for me? My mother sobbed harder. We thought we could move past it. We decided to raise you as his. We thought love would be enough. We thought if we just tried. You didn't move past it, I snapped. You punished me for it. You let him punish me. That's not fair. My dad snapped back, defensive now. We were harder on you because you were capable. You're strong. Tyler needed more support. Support is telling your kid, we love you no matter what. Not paying for his vacations while your daughter bags groceries to apply to college, I said. Support is not lying for him when he drives drunk and wrecks your truck while grounding your other kid for borrowing it sober. Support isn't making one child earn every scrap of affection while handing the other one the world on a silver platter. Rebecca whispered. I saw it too. Almost to herself. Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear. I didn't know, he said. I swear, Mara, I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I shot back. It was easier not to notice as long as you kept getting what you wanted. My mom wiped her face. We made mistakes, she said. Terrible mistakes. But right now your brother is dying, and you're the only one who can save him. We can talk about this later. No, I said. We're talking about it now. They begged. They cried. They tried every tactic they'd used on me my whole life. Guilt minimization. We did our best. We didn't mean it like that. And then I said the thing I went there to say. I'm not donating my kidney. Silence. Actual silence. Like the house itself stopped breathing. My mother shook her head like she misheard. What? No, I repeated. I am not donating. I am not going under major surgery, giving up an organ, and putting my own health at risk for people who have never, not once, chosen me when it cost them anything. You'll let your brother die over some resentment? Jen snapped, voice shaking. What is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I said slowly, is that I spent 30 years believing there was something wrong with me because of the way this family treated me. I twisted myself into knots trying to earn basic kindness. I worked twice as hard to get half as far and told myself it was because I was flawed, when in reality, I was the walking reminder that my mother cheated and my father couldn't forgive her, and you all decided that was my cross to carry. He's your brother, my dad yelled. Half-brother, I corrected. Legally, emotionally, functionally. But that's generous, because we were never really in the same family, were we? My mom grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. He will die, she hissed. Do you understand? And I understand, I said, prying her fingers off, that if he dies, that's a tragedy. But it's not a murder I committed by not sacrificing my body. A transplant would be a gift, not a debt payment. And I'm allowed to say no to giving away parts of myself. For once in my goddamn life, I'm choosing me. If you walk out that door, my mother shrieked as I headed for it, I will never forgive you. Never. You are not my daughter. I looked back at her, my heart oddly calm. You made that clear a long time ago, I said. You just never said it out loud. Then I left. The next 3 days were hell. My phone blew up nonstop. My parents, Rebecca, aunts, uncles, cousins, Tyler's friends, people I barely remembered from church, half of them begging, half of them threatening some version of, you'll regret this for the rest of your life. Evan started answering for me because the constant buzzing was making me jump out of my skin. I'd hear him in the kitchen saying things like, she doesn't owe you her organs, and no, you don't get to scream at my wife, and this conversation is over. and then it went public. I found out the same way everyone else did. A friend from work sent me a link with, "Is this your family?" and 10 question marks. There they were on the local news. My parents on their couch, carefully lit, Mom crying delicately into a tissue, Tyler in the background hooked up to a dialysis machine like a prop. The reporter asked, "You say your daughter is a perfect match?" My mom nodded. "The doctors said the odds of siblings matching like that are like winning the lottery. But she's refusing to donate because she's angry with us. She's punishing her innocent brother." She actually said, "Innocent brother." The reporter made sad mouth. "What would you say to her if she's watching?" Mom looked straight into the camera. "Mara, please, let go of the past. Your brother's life is worth more than your anger. You'll never forgive yourself if he dies." They never mentioned the DNA, or the affair, or 30 years of favoritism, just selfish daughter refuses to save dying brother. The comments section, I don't even have to tell you, you already know. What kind of monster lets family die? If my sibling needed my kidney, I'd be on the operating table tomorrow. She doesn't deserve to be called a sister. Imagine her kids finding this out someday. I hope they hate her. I got death threats. People wished cancer on me. Someone found my LinkedIn and commented, "Hope your boss sees what kind of person you are." My boss did see. She called me into her office, closed the door and said, "I saw the news. Is there more to it than they're saying?" I told her everything. She listened, then said, "Take a paid leave until this dies down. For you and for the company. And for what it's worth, I'd make the same choice you did." 2 nights later, there was a knock on our door at 10 p.m. when normal people are in pajamas watching Netflix. Evan went to answer it, and I heard a man's voice say, "Is this the home of Mara?" Before Evan called out, "Babe, you're going to want to come here." A man around 60, Asian, neatly dressed but visibly nervous, stood on my porch. "My name is David Chan," he said. "I think I'm your biological father." I sat him at our kitchen table and made tea with hands that were a little too shaky. He told me he'd been a cardiology fellow when he met my mom, that they'd had an affair, that she told him she was pregnant and then told him she was staying with her husband and that he had to stay away for the good of the family. He tried to reach out once when I was 5 and she met him on the porch and begged him to leave us alone. "I believed her," he said, eyes wet. "I believed that staying away was the noble thing. I told myself Robert loved you, that you'd be okay. I didn't know how wrong that was until Robert's sister called me last week and told me everything. Turns out Aunt Linda had gotten drunk enough on family loyalty and rage to call him after the DNA reveal. She'd given him my married name and city. He watched the news segment, saw my face, and drove up from California. I have followed you from a distance," he admitted, ashamed. "I have no right to say that. I hired a PI years ago. I know you went to Oregon State. I know you're an engineer. I know you married a man named Evan and have 2 children. I know it sounds terrible. I just needed to know you were okay." I sat there in shock as this stranger listed details about my life like he was reading a file. "You should hate me," he said quietly. "I let your mother talk me out of being your father. I let fear run my life. I can't change that, but I can tell the truth now. And I am not going to stand by while the people who lied to you for 32 years destroy you for finally saying no." 3 days later, he stood in front of a row of microphones in a suit and said my name into a bank of cameras. He told the story I just heard in my kitchen. He said, "My daughter is being vilified for protecting her own body from people who never protected her. That is abuse, not love. The media loves a twist." Suddenly there was another angle. Woman refuses to donate kidney after discovering father is not her father. Panels of doctors talked about bodily autonomy. Therapists talked about golden children and scapegoats. Other people with similar stories came out of the woodwork. My parents went from tragic victims of a selfish daughter to something less clear. They refused to give statements beyond family matter, which just made reporters dig harder. And then David called me and said very casually, "I got tested." "For what?" I asked, already knowing. "For kidney donation," he said. "I'm a compatible match. Not as perfect as you, but good enough. The transplant team cleared me." I nearly dropped my phone. "Why would you do that?" "Because he's a young man who doesn't deserve to die for his parents' sins," David said firmly. "Because I can. Because I'm healthy enough. Because it takes the weight off you. Because I spent 30 years doing nothing while you suffered. And this is something I can actually do." "David, you don't even know him." I said. He's your brother by blood and complicated family dynamics, David cut in. And he's someone's son, someone's husband. I don't have to know him to decide I'm okay with one less kidney. I do know you, and I know that even if you stand by your decision, and you'll still lie awake wondering if he died because you didn't say yes. I can stop that thought from ruining your life. I didn't want him to be right, but he was. The transplant happened at Stanford. I went with Evan, left the kids with his parents, and sat in another waiting room that smelled like clean and fear. My parents were there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. Jen was there, holding a cup she never drank from. Tyler looked like a ghost, hopeful and terrified. When they wheeled Tyler past us, he asked the nurse to slow down. Mara, he said, voice fuzzy with pre-op meds. Thank you. I know you didn't choose this, but if you'd told him not to. I didn't tell him anything, I said. David made his own choice. Still, he said, eyes glassy, I'm sorry for everything. I wish I'd been a better brother. Me too, I said honestly. You get another chance now. Don't waste it. David went in next. He reached for my hand and squeezed. You and I have a lot of years to catch up on, he said. I intend to stick around for them. 8 hours later, the surgeon came out with tired eyes and a smile. The kidney pinked up immediately, she said. Both patients are stable. We're optimistic. Tyler ended up with David's kidney. David ended up with a neat row of staples and a bunch of new fans in transplant ethics circles. I ended up with a weird mixture of relief, leftover rage, and a dad. Over the next year, a lot shifted. Tyler did well. His new kidney worked beautifully. He went back to part-time work, then full-time. He and Jen had a baby girl they named Hope because of course they did. He texts me photos sometimes. She's cute. I send a heart emoji and a gift and keep my distance. David came up to visit once a month. He took Nora to MSI and bought Cal an astronomy book, and listened to their endless rambling like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever heard. He came to Nora's science fair and told her your structural design is excellent, and she glowed for 3 hours. He and I talk a lot. About everything. About the life he lived. About the life I didn't get to have. About what being a father actually means. I thought I was doing the noble thing, he said once when the kids were in bed and we were sitting on my back porch with mugs of tea. Staying away. Letting your parents present a unified front. I thought I was sacrificing my wants for your stability. I was wrong. I was a coward. I let your mother's fear and your father's pride dictate your life. I can't change what I did, but I can change what I do now. You gave a kidney to someone you'd never met, I pointed out. That's not cowardly. I gave a kidney to your story, he said simply. So the ending isn't that your brother died because you finally put yourself first. My relationship with my parents is complicated. We meet occasionally in public places. They are on their best behavior. They say they are in therapy. My mother has apologized 100 times in 100 ways. I thought I was protecting you, she says. I thought staying together was better than breaking the family. You didn't protect me, I told her. You protected your image. You chose appearances over honesty. You chose your comfort over my reality. That's what you have to sit with. My father apologized exactly once in a stiff, almost angry way. I shouldn't have treated you differently, he said. I was wrong. You treated me like a punishment for something I didn't do, I replied. You don't get points for realizing that now. He didn't argue. I think that's as close to growth as he may ever get. Rebecca and I are probably closer than we've ever been. She started therapy too and realized that being the mediator all those years meant she never learned to ask for what she needed either. We talk a lot about what we want to do differently with our own kids. We both agree that secrecy has no place in our families. People still ask if I regret my choice. It's usually phrased as, now that Tyler is okay, do you regret not being the donor yourself? Like the happy outcome means it would have been better if I just caved. I don't, not even a little. I'm glad Tyler is alive. I'm grateful beyond words that David stepped up. I'm deeply relieved that my kids didn't have to watch me go through major surgery and risk complications for people who never considered how their choices affected me. But if no donor had been found, if Tyler had died, that would have been a tragedy. It still wouldn't have been my responsibility to fix. What changed isn't that my brother lived. What changed is that I finally stopped believing I existed to fix my parents' mistakes. I have a note stuck in my journal that my therapist said early on, family is not who demands your body, family is who protects it. By that definition, my family is my husband, my kids, and the man who showed up at my door and then lay on a surgical table for a boy who wasn't his son, so his daughter wouldn't have to destroy herself. Everyone else? They're relatives. If you read all this, thank you. You don't have to agree with my choice. You might be one of those people who would donate without thinking twice. That's fine. But if you take anything from this, let it be this. You do not owe anyone your organs. You do not owe anyone your body, your health, or your safety to keep a lie alive, or to make someone feel better about the past. Sometimes the bravest, kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for the people you're raising, is to be the first person in your family to say, no, it ends with me.